This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. This holiday season, let Pine Melon make your Christmas prep simple and stress-free. From fresh local ingredients to holiday staples like lamb racks and ham, they have everything you need to create a memorable feast. Avoid the holiday rush and enjoy the convenience of grocery delivery right to your door. Use code CityCastDenver to get $35 off your first order of $75 or more. Support local farmers and makers while making your holidays brighter with Pine Melon. Just go to pinemelon.com to make your grocery order today. That's pinemelon.com. Today on CityCast Denver. A move to kill the sales of flavored tobacco products in Denver is heating up at City Council again, and the mayor's on board. So what changed since former Mayor Hancock vetoed a similar measure in 2021? Me and producer Paul Caroli dig into the vaping dilemma, plus updates on the Caring for Denver Foundation investigation and one of Paul's longest-running pizza beefs. Today is Tuesday, December 10th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Hey, Paul.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. So before we get into it, I think we have a correction we need to make regarding...
No welcome back?
I know. You're right.
It's been like 3 weeks.
I've also been seeing you for a week. And listeners, you have not been hearing from Paul for a week.
I want fanfare. I want Thin Lizzy. The boy is back in town.
Do you want to tell people where you were?
No.
Paul!
It'll probably come up.
Paul was in Japan.
I was in Japan for a couple weeks and then I got COVID.
And then he came back and he brought COVID. And so he wasn't allowed in the space with us.
I've been joking that I brought back a new strain.
Great.
Yeah. Is that funny? Do people haven't been liking it?
Nope. No. This is why we made you stay home last week and we wouldn't let you come in.
Yeah,
but you're
it was the
here.
right move. Yeah, I'm here now and I'm feeling great.
So listeners who have been wondering, did we dispose of Paul? Did we do something with Paul? No, he's here.
No, I'm back.
He's here and he's alive. And the first thing we have to talk about is pizza, appropriately.
Yes, we do. This was one of my favorite stories of the year, probably. But I got a little bit of it wrong. This is another installment of our semi-regular segment. Paul was wrong.
Oops, Paul did it again.
So yeah, you remember like a month ago, I was talking about Bojo's, local pizza institution, and their employee ownership situation.
Yes.
How I had like detected. I was skeptical of of all the like celebratory attention they got like a year ago when it was their 50th anniversary and the longtime owner, Chip Bear, said that he was going to celebrate by giving the company back to the employees. He was going to make it an employee-owned pizza chain. And he got a lot of attention. The governor was like, Chip Bear, let's do Bojo's Day. We should call it Bojo's Day, celebrate him. And Joe Neguse was there. And anyway, I said something when we were talking about that was just incorrect, and I have to apologize for that.
Okay.
I said in the article from the Colorado Sun where this whole thing was like the story broke initially, I said that the article did not quote any of the employees, and that's what tipped me off to like thinking that the employees might not have been aware of this employee ownership like offer, because that's what I uncovered eventually. A year later, I called up Bojo's, I called the state employee ownership office, and they were like, they never did this. And then Bojo's was like, yeah, we didn't actually do it because the employees weren't all interested. And
it takes buy-in from employees to say, yes, we want to become an employee-owned company. It's a whole different structure. It's a different thing they would have to want to take on.
But yeah, and this particular type of employee ownership was an ESOP. So like it functions like a retirement plan. So for the employees, like going for this ESOP, it would basically be like getting a different kind of job benefit. And depending on what your relationship is with your employer, in this case Bojo's, like, do you want to be there long term? Do you want to have your benefits tied up in a retirement plan or a company's futures like this? Or would you rather just have more cash in the short term? And for a lot of people working in like service jobs like this is,
absolutely,
you might just want the short term. Anyway, so that's what the whole dynamic was. We'll put a link to that episode back there. But again, have to apologize because I mischaracterized Jason Blevin's reporting in this. I said he didn't quote any of the employees. In fact, he did. He quoted several of the employees, and this was actually like once I looked back at the story after he listened, and I was like, oh, this is what tipped me off. Not the fact that he didn't quote employees, but it was what the employees said. So Blevins sent me these quotes, and then I reread these, and I was like, oh yeah, it had been a year, and I should have reread the story properly. But the quote specifically was from this person, Alex Dunn, who worked at Bojo's during college, and then came back and became the manager at the Idaho Springs location. And the quote in his story was, she said she's still, quote, wrapping my head around the idea of employee ownership. So that's what made me think, wait a second, these employees might not be on board.
This was not a rah-rah, can't wait to become an employee owner of my...
Yeah, this was like...
this place where I work.
Yeah, someone who didn't like know what she was being offered while her boss was being celebrated by the governor. And then over the course of the next year, the negotiations fell apart and then it didn't happen.
That's like, yeah, okay. I'm just like having this picture in my mind of this poor employee being like, what?
Yeah.
And the governor being like, good job to your boss. And you'd be like, I don't know what an ESOP is. But I have to say something to a reporter who's asking me right now, and I don't want to sound either way about it.
It's a weird situation.
So I see what you're saying is like, you had mischaracterized that no one had spoken to him, but in reality, he did speak to some employees, but you read between the lines of their commentary.
Yes, because of my own personal twisted, acrimonious relationship with the Bojo's company, I saw something that maybe other people didn't see.
This is like my DIY art world thing. Whenever I read a story about something in the arts happening in Denver, I've got like 15 years of... experience going, that's not what this is about. That's not what they're saying. And the average person is not reading it that same way. So I see what you're saying is like sometimes when you're an expert in something, it can get in your way a little bit.
Yeah. And again, no disrespect to Blevins. He's a great reporter. I respect him a ton.
He does. He does great reporting on mountain towns. Like we need somebody in there who knows these places. And it was a simple mistake.
Yeah. You know? No, I don't even think it was a mistake. I just think, he talked to somebody and they said what they said.
Right.
I mean, he was covering the story as he saw it.
Our bad on our part for misrelaying
totally
that
my
information.
mistake. Totally my mistake.
Well, thanks for addressing that, Paul. We will share those as well as that episode as well as Jason's piece about this because I still think it's an interesting story. We are continuing to talk about unionization, workers' rights, and all these different. There's actually Meow Wolf is talking about some union stuff right now again because there's layoffs coming up, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll have to get into that later, but it's something we're always watching. This episode is brought to you by the Office of Climate Action. Whether something needs fixing, you need something temporarily, or you're just looking for the next unique item for your wardrobe, make the choice to reuse. It's just as good as new. Introducing Denver's Reuse Directory, where you'll find all of the Mile High's reuse businesses in one place. Need the sole of your shoe repaired? Take a peek at Denver's Reuse Directory and find a local cobbler. Have a home improvement project to tackle? Check out a tool from one of Denver's equipment rental shops. Heading to a holiday party and need a fancy outfit? Stat? Explore endless consignment and resale stores across the city. All of these resources can be found in Denver's Reuse Directory. Repair it, rent it, buy it used. It's just as good as new. Find your way to reuse and support local businesses at denvergov.org/reuse directory. That's denvergov.org/reuse directory. This episode is brought to you by CAP Management. CAP Management is a Denver-based HOA management company serving townhomes, mid-rises, and high-rises. From staffing, accounting, project management, careful reserve planning, customer service, and more, CAP serves properties that appreciate working with an engaged, proactive team with the expertise to work with the most complex properties. Many of their clients make up the skyline of our wonderful city. CAP is also the only HOA management company with a sustainability mission, dedicated to guiding HOAs and how to operate in a sustainable way, navigating ordinances like Energize Denver and Colorado's Building Performance Program. I'm just thinking about when my mom took over her HOA and got them to install those car chargers. Looking for Brooke to manage your property? Well, she's available. I'm just kidding. CAP is working to envision the future of the HOA industry, like their partnership with the University of Colorado to pilot the nation's first sustainable HOA certification framework. If your HOA is looking for help, visit capmanagement.com to learn more. That's capmanagement.com.
Well, let's get into our top story this
Yes.
week. This is a really interesting one. It comes 3 years after we basically had the same thing happen before. There was a proposal to ban flavored tobacco in Denver. Some folks on city council brought this forward. I think Amanda Sawyer was leading the charge at that time. She represents like southeast, central Denver. But now a different group is bringing it back, and it seems like it's going to pass. But Bree, what exactly has City Council been working on this time?
So it's a ban again that would prohibit the sale of pretty much all flavored tobacco products within city limits. And as Joe Rubino at the Denver Post reported, this includes flavored offerings for e-cigarettes, vape cartridges, nicotine pouches,
and that's Zyn.
Zyn, yes.
Which is crucial.
Which is something we have learned about from our Gen Z producer, Olivia. I did not know anything about these things. But
she tells us, I wrote this down because I didn't realize this, but nicotine derived from tobacco is in Zyn, but no actual tobacco?
Yeah, it just sounds like another Frankenstein product that we're consuming.
I don't get it.
But it also,
it's not in my life.
No, me neither. I mean,
I know some people who would do Zyn pouches though.
Really?
Yeah. It's not like we had a conversation about it, but I saw it in someone's mouth and I was like, oh.
Because I just imagine it's like chew in the way that you use it, but it isn't quite like chew. So
I don't know. I think you just stick it in there and it sort of like seeps.
Wow.
I don't know though. I don't know if you keep one in there all day or if it's like a few minutes.
It tastes good. Let's try it.
I think it tastes good because they sell in flavors. They sell like the mango flavors and like mint and stuff. And
it looks like gum packages. I've seen it and I thought it was gum.
Yeah.
Also a bad sign.
But not
also,
for long.
This also includes menthol cigarettes though, which I think was that excluded from the last ban?
I don't think so. What they excluded last time, it was definitely controversial. But they excluded last time with the hookah pipes. And some people call shisha because it's like a culturally specific thing.
Which I think still does, right? This version of the bill will exempt hookah tobacco. Yeah, so it exempts, this bill will exempt hookah tobacco in part because of its, quote, cultural significance for people with Middle Eastern and North African roots. So hookah bars, hookah lounges can still operate, it sounds like. So that's where we're at, is just we're looking at another ban of flavored tobacco products.
Why is this happening now?
I mean, I don't know if it's necessary. I feel like they just wanted to. Well, okay, actually, no. Here's what happened: is the council was on board. Council passed it in 2021, but then Hancock said no. And so I think this time around we have a new council, we have a new mayor, and the mayor was fully in support of it. So it seemed to me like council was like, why would we not try this again now? I think council at large, Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez, is spearheading this. And if I recall correctly, she spearheaded the soda ban as well for kids.
Oh, yeah, that was her thing.
And I think that's a big part of it. That's what she talks about in this piece from the Denver Post, too, is she's a mom. And I think that's really, to me, that was one of the pieces at the heart of this story is this is really a conversation that parents are having, but not necessarily other adults that don't have kids or interact with kids regularly, I would say, like teachers or something. Because it's not something I hear a ton about from my friends who have younger kids. It's like friends who are interacting with teenagers regularly. This is absolutely something they're talking about because kids are vaping.
What are they saying about kids and their vaping habits?
You know, I had dinner the other night with a group of women, and 4 of the 5 of them have been or are currently educators here in Denver. And they said it's a huge problem, particularly surprisingly to me, my friends that teach middle school. Middle schoolers are vaping. One of my friends told me that her school had to close 2 of the bathrooms because kids were they just couldn't. They were consistently
kids wouldn't stop vaping
in the bathroom. Yes, and smoking hash pens too, which is I can't imagine smoking weed at
high school's so
grade.
Different now.
But this is 6th grade.
6th grade?
Yes, this is a middle school situation. So, and I'm not trying to create hysteria around it. This was an anecdotal conversation I had with a couple of teachers, but they did say like this is a problem for young people, and so they're fully in support of this because. If anything, teachers are often the people that are interacting with young people all day. I mean, obviously parents are, but these are the other people that are having to deal with kids in this issue. And it truly is a huge issue.
Interesting.
Which makes sense to me. I mean, we've talked about it before, but like I was a teenage smoker too. If they had bubblegum vape, I would have been all about it.
Yeah.
Like that is absolutely targeted at me, 15-year-old me. Like, so
I think that that's just part of it is like, this is just also a growing conversation nationally around kids and vape use. There's a podcast I listen to and it's a commercial every single time is against vaping.
Against vaping?
Uh-huh.
So it's like a PSA or something?
It's like a national PSA.
Interesting.
So it's something that definitely that young people are dealing with and interacting with.
I do, I don't hear adult friends of mine talking about this a lot.
I don't either.
Unless they have kids, with one exception. There's one person I know who talks about nicotine, and like we talk about the negative health effects all the time. I think those are pretty well understood.
Absolutely.
But I have this friend who says the opposite. He says that nicotine's good for you. I think there's this other strain of like alternative.
What bro podcast is he listening to? This is feeling very Theo Vaughnish to me. I don't know.
Perhaps. But I think there's some kind of like alternative medicine world in which nicotine is like a good thing. And I bet those people are pissed about this.
Isn't there like a lot of science-backed data about the dangers of nicotine and tobacco?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, when we talked about the new Zyn factory coming to Aurora, I remember I went to I forget it was the CDC or the National Institute of Health or something, and looked, and they have all this data, all these effects of nicotine. It's like very well documented that these things are not good for you.
Yeah. I mean, again, I lived through this in the 90s when they were like, hey, tobacco companies can no longer use cartoons to advertise cigarettes. And I have to say that the push against smoking for young people at that point was really strong. It's not actually the reason I quit. I didn't quit till I was 26. But I truly did not see the vape the wave of this coming, because this just feels like a whole other animal now, because it doesn't include, kids having lighters. Like it's more concealable. Someone was telling me they were like sitting next to someone who was vaping on a plane the other day. Like, it's easier to do in more places. It's easier to conceal. And like, I can see where this would be very frustrating for me as a parent or a teacher. It feels a little bit like it's out of my hands. So I can see where this ban would be attractive to folks that interact with young people all the time.
You know what I still don't really understand very well? Maybe you do, but is the, secondhand smoke. I get that was an issue. That smoke has got all the bad stuff that the smoker's getting in their lungs.
Growing up as a kid that went to bars,
But is secondhand vapor
I don't know,
bad?
Paul. And I've wondered about this because someone that I was with was vaping around my kid the other day. And I was like, hey, can you like do that outside? But I don't. My assumption is just like better safe than sorry. But I don't know.
Sure.
That's a good question.
I have no idea.
Because it definitely disappears quicker. It doesn't hang on your, it's like you can walk into someone's apartment and know that even if it's been freshly painted and the person that lives there doesn't smoke, someone was smoking in there 20 years ago, you can smell it. I wonder if that's the same thing with vaping.
We got to go to one of these bathrooms in this.
We have to go hang out in a middle school bathroom and see how it's going.
Did the bubblegum scents linger?
Oh, God.
You know what else we got to talk about is what's different this time. We got a new mayor, but is that all that's different? What's your analysis of like why it failed last time, this proposed tobacco ban, and then why it looks like it's going to pass this time?
I mean, I really think it comes down to the council makeup and the mayoral a person, like the person that's in that position, because they're on the same page now. And I think the only council member that voted against this ban moving on, this was considered last week. It was considered by the Safety, Housing, Education, and Homelessness Committee, which is a subcommittee within council. And this group voted 6-1 to advance the ban for consideration. And Councilman Kevin Flynn was the only no vote on that.
Yeah.
And his argument is what he told Joe Rubino was all it is going to do now is lead to a black market, and it's going to lead to trouble. It's going to create more police interaction with our young people. And I thought of our progressive policy is that we want to diminish that interaction between police and young people.
Interesting. So is that part of the ban? Is they're going to enforce like...
It doesn't say.
I thought it was just going to be like banning it from stores, because that's the thing that Hancock said 3 years ago. Was he said his reasons for vetoing it were convenience stores rely on the sales of flavored tobacco bans, and if the marquee outside the Conoco on Spear, how full of Zyn advertisements it's been all year, is any indication, I totally believe that that's the case. And then he also would talk about the statewide ban, how effective a local ban would be versus a statewide ban. Because he was like, kids will just be able to go to Golden or Aurora or Arvada or Westminster or whatever and get their bubblegum vape juice if I ban it here.
And I think that's why it's been tabled before, was they were waiting on a statewide ban of some kind, which didn't happen. But what interestingly, though, in 2021, Golden enacted a similar ban. And but they also set up a $100,000 fund to support smoke and vape shops and convenience stores that maybe would lose revenue to this. And the mayor in Golden said so far it's had a positive effect. It went into effect this January. And she said the only closures she knows of are 2 vape and tobacco stores that went out of business total.
I mean, you don't want that. It's not great.
Yeah, but that's not, I wouldn't say that would be super concerning. 2 shops doesn't seem like a ton. And it sounds like the good is outweighing the bad in terms of the point of this legislation, I believe, at least from how it's being presented in Golden here and here in Denver, is to get it out of kids' hands. So interestingly, too, some of my educator friends were like, oh, also parents buy these for their kids. And I was like, what? And then I remembered my friend in high school's grandma bought us cigarettes. So tale as old as time.
That's funny.
It's kind of dark, but yeah.
Do you think that we'll see a statewide ban?
This is where the thing we talk about all the time, the libertarian streak comes in.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, Polis celebrated the Zinn factory coming in.
Yeah, our free market guy, or I think about like the Don Corums of the world, the rural Coloradans who are like, leave me alone kind of thing. Like, let me make my own decisions, let my community make our own decisions. And I would say that based on the makeup of the state, I don't know if it would pass a statewide ban. And if it did, it might be one of those votes where Denver and Boulder say one thing, the rest of the state says something else. So
I have to agree.
I genuinely don't know how that would play out.
Yeah, I don't think Polis would be into it at all.
No, I don't think so either. But also as a person that's going to be raising someone who's going to become a teenager, it's changed my thoughts about it a little bit.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know why all of the messaging that I got as a teenager didn't work or resonate with me, and why I smoked for 12 years, but I don't want to see that for my kid. So I would vote for this in the hopes that if it became something that voters made a decision on, I would vote on it for the hopes of kids not having access to this kind of stuff, because it does suck. It does suck. I don't love this for kids.
Yeah, people in 6th grade, kids in 6th grade are getting addicted to nicotine.
Let alone, I first smoked when I was 13. I can't, thinking about that now, I'm like, I was a baby. Yuck.
Yeah.
Those smoking Marlboro Reds versus smoking a bubblegum vape. I can see why it's even easier for kids to get hooked on it. I sound like such an old person, but have you smoked a Marlboro Red, Paul?
No.
That shit will burn your throat out. It is hard. It is the cowboy's cigarette, but it's like what everybody started on when I was in high school. And I think about it now and I'm like, ooh, how did my poor little body handle that? Oh, it's awful. And I can imagine this just being an even easier sell. Why? When you can have a mango vape.
Yeah.
Ugh.
But what about the adults who want their mango vapes? Adults like mango vape too.
I'm sure you can order them online. I'm sure there's plenty of ways to get them. I wouldn't be worried that adults can't get them. Or the arguments sometimes against this ban have said, well, they'll just drive to Lakewood.
Yeah.
And it's true. I can drive 10 blocks to Lakewood if I really wanted a mango vape.
Makes me think about alcohol too, like how entrenched the alcohol industry is, because there's so many flavors of alcohol that are very kid friendly. There's a bomb pop flavored hard
cotton
seltzer,
candy, vodka.
And no one questions that.
No, the first thing I drank when I drank alcohol when I was in the basement of my friend's house when I was 14 was a Bartles and James wild berry wine cooler.
Yeah, there
it was
you
like
go.
pop. It was like a alcoholic pop.
Honestly, probably no one wants to hear about that right now anyway. We'll talk about that in January, I think. It's the holidays. People are looking for their coping mechanisms to make it through. Before we say goodbye to the flavored tobacco debate, what's next? What do people need to know?
Okay, so as of this recording, we're recording this on Monday. Council will be meeting about it Monday night. And then, so they're going to do a first reading full council. Then they're going to have a public comment period. And then they will vote on it, I believe, on the 16th. So we will know more on the 16th. But there will be a first reading. After you've heard this, it will have happened last night.
Sounds good. Let us know what you think. Don't wait for that public comment session. Send us a voicemail.
Yeah, what do you think about the potential ban on flavored tobacco? 720-500-5418.
The Vapin and Zennin hotline is open 720-500-5418. This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. This holiday season, let Pine Melon make your Christmas prep simple and stress-free. From fresh local ingredients to holiday staples like lamb racks and ham, they've got everything you need to create a memorable feast. Avoid the holiday rush and enjoy the convenience of grocery delivery right to your door. With over 200 local farmers, ranchers, and producers across Colorado, Pine Melon delivers high-quality meats, fresh produce, baked goods, pantry staples, and more straight to your door. Skip the crowded stores and let Pine Melon handle the hard part. No subscriptions required, just same-day delivery in a 2-hour window within Denver and Boulder. Enjoy the convenience of grocery delivery with Pine Melon. And don't forget the code CityCastDenver to get $35 off your first order of $75 or more. Just go to pinemelon.com to make your order today. That's pinemelon.com.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
We got some interesting responses to our Friday show.
Yes, let's talk about that. We talked about the Caring for Denver investigation from CPR News from Ben Marcus. Katie Cheshire from Westward joined me, Justine Sandoval, our politics and Green Chili correspondent, and it was a really fraught story, I think. What did we hear, Paul?
Well, let's go to a voicemail.
When you look at the research on similar programs as the ones in Ben's article, you see that these kinds of grassroots programs are essential for moving forward in a sector dominated by institutionalism and tradition. Those larger programs, like STAR, are jointly funded federally and by the state. So, of course, culturally competent and local-specific programs would need a disproportionate amount of funding. And the reporting criteria are different, too. These aren't quite captured by those population-level statistics. From the caringfordenver.org website, quote, each grantee receives an evaluation and learning partner who provides technical assistance and helps them identify meaningful metrics to measure. This is instead of those standardized, meaningless metrics that organizations might make up because they're forced to report on it by some oversight agency. So example after example in the CPR article show me that Ben Marcus is trying to create substance out of nothing and induce hysteria around a model that should be lifted up. I rely on you, CityCast, Bree, and Olivia, and where was Paul? And this is devil's advocate pushback here. I rely on you to provide balanced and nuanced perspective to articles like this, but I found your inspection on today's episode lacking. Your reporting on Marcus's article felt like giving him a thumbs up rather than doing the journalism and the critique. So honestly, I encourage you to get in touch with the Caring for Denver grant administrators and the grantee managers themselves for a closer idea.
Wow.
Pretty harsh, pretty strong words.
Yeah. This is such an interesting piece because I was such a supporter of this initiative getting passed.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we should say some of the background in case people missed the Friday show. So this is an article Ben Marcus, investigative reporter for CPR, he wrote last week. He looked into this Caring for Denver program. So it was a vote that Denverites passed in 2018 to do a sales tax, levy a sales tax. So we all started paying in some money. And since then, $170 million has been raised. And all that money has gone to this nonprofit the city's contracted with, also called Caring for Denver, that has distributed grants to a whole bunch of different organizations to try to help with our mental health and substance use issues across the city. Meanwhile, what Ben Marcus found is that suicide rates and overdose rates have only gone up.
Yes, and those were the numbers I think that this reporting heavily leaned on to prove in some capacity that this program maybe wasn't up to snuff or wasn't working appropriately. And I think a couple folks have pointed out maybe he cherry picked, or the data he decided, or the examples he decided to show in the reporting of where this money was going maybe was not a full picture of where this money has been going, mm-hmm. or how these programs are evaluated, or, it was just, it kind of to me just showed the intricacies and nuance of when we're trying to deal with something as complex as mental health issues, especially related to substance use.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's my takeaway from all this is like that is very hard to track.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked at like the citywide suicide rates and overdose rates, and he looked at some of the other neighboring counties and what they've experienced on those same like big picture macro metrics. And I think, I don't know. I mean, I really hesitate to get into it because I can't say I know all the details.
Same.
And he really did a deep dive here. But I mean, that's certainly what we heard from a lot of the folks who were involved in Caring for Denver after that conversation on our Friday show. I mean, we heard from several grantees who were pretty upset. I mean, everyone basically who's involved in Caring for Denver feels like this report misrepresented them. I mean, yeah. I talked to Leslie Herod on Friday, and she was like, this article misrepresented what we do in totality, was her quote to me.
And Representative Herod, if folks did not hear or read the story, was one of the biggest backers of this publicly and spoke a lot in favor of that. She was a steward of this initiative. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think she's someone who absolutely we would love to hear from because she was there. She is there right now.
Yeah. So she was like, she had a lot of quibbles with the article. She talked about like how he, maybe it didn't include the appropriate context for like some specific semantic issues that didn't seem like an issue in his writing. Like this whole thing about like, what does it mean to be an unlicensed psychotherapist? Like he would talk about, he was making a point, and the way they packaged the article at CPR was saying like, oh, this money is all going to these organizations that don't have any licensed psychotherapists or licensed clinicians. And that sounds kind of scary.
Sure.
But then, what Leslie was telling me was like, well, unlicensed clinician is actually kind of a specific term in this world. It often refers to someone who's working towards a license. And a lot of experts say that that's like a perfectly reasonable position to be in for delivering high quality care. So maybe that's not as like disqualifying as it seemed to be in the article.
That's helpful context too, because I have a couple of friends who have been in school to become therapists or become psychotherapists, and this is part of everyone's program. You're out in the community usually as like sort of a resident. So you're doing the work and you're being supervised and everything, but you're not licensed yet. And so I think that's a fair and helpful thing to note. Yeah.
And then the other issue was like transparency in general, because his article, he also made it clear, like he was a very aggressive reporter, which is what you want out of an investigative reporter. Like I love that he sparked this conversation. We're taking a look at this personally. But his article was making the point that like some of these organizations didn't give him the data that he was hoping to see to get a better sense of what the impact of the money has been. And Leslie Herod was like, we gave him all the data we could have. Like there was things he asked for that don't exist.
Sure.
But she acknowledged that there was definitely some issues with like unclear expectations when it comes to transparency. And that's why she says she supports City Council's decision to change the length of the contract extension for Caring for Denver from 5 years to 1 year.
So they'll reevaluate it again in a year, essentially.
Yeah, she says that 1 year extension is going to give them time to sort out some of these issues and make sure everybody's on the same page when it comes to like what information can be public and what information should really be private for the benefit of the participants in these programs.
Absolutely.
Because they have a right to privacy on some issues.
It's hard. It's hard. Well, we'll keep following it. Well, welcome back, Paul.
Thank you.
And see you next time.
See ya.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Big Tobacco about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye. Tell your friend who's vaping to stop that. Right now. Vaping inside to stop, please. Please stop vaping in my child's room. I'm just kidding.